welcome back to Under Further Review. We have a good one for y'all today. It's a little bit of a controversial topic.
Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. Something that you guys in the comments or viewers, listeners may or may not agree with our opinions on. But we think it's relevant and we'd love to hit on it. And the question being, do politics belong in sports? And I ask you that, Brandon. Love to get your perspective first.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're essential to what, not just politics, but current events in the world. I think you look back in the history of sports, there's been many sports figures that were outspoken and were advocates for what was right, no matter what that was, in a time of turmoil or injustice. And so you can't separate the two. They've always kind of been connected through history because in America, in sports, we've always had this situation of whether it was segregation or whatever the times called for, there was always something that was happening where an athlete had to take a stance.
Right.
And so I don't think that that will ever change. And I think that young people now resonate more with those people, those athletes and the people that they look up to or idolize. And a lot of times they get their political information or influences or information really from these figures.
Yeah.
And so even though, we might not necessarily want to be role models or want to be that type of thing, we kind of have that responsibility thrusted upon us just because of the eyes watching us.
Yeah.
And so just to answer your question, I think absolutely it has a place. I think, there have been tremendous changes made and tremendous impact made from athletes that have been outspoken about certain things in politics. And we see the changes and the differences in today. So that's my thought process. What about you?
Yeah, man. I think you're spot on. I agree with everything that you had to say there. Some people probably think that they come to sports for an escape, to get away from the realities of whatever they're dealing with on a daily basis. Yeah. And honestly, I think there's a little bit of privilege that comes along with that perspective. For certain communities, our community, our everyday could almost be considered political, so to speak. And I think, like you said, there's been from the inception of sports, honestly, we're being completely real. People have been using the platform, whether it be athletics, entertainment, whatever, because sports, at the end of the day, is entertainment.
Exactly.
And people will use forms of entertainment to get some type of narrative across. And that can be political, that can be spiritual, that can be any other agenda that you can think of. And I think it is really in a place to stay because the current modern athlete feels almost compelled and more willing than ever because I think we're more informed. We're in the information age. And sometimes it can backfire a little bit because we may not be in the wisdom age because I think there might need to be a little bit more of that. But because there's so much knowledge and information out there, it's hard to separate the two. And I think there's value that's added from using that platform to someone's benefit, like LeBron and what he does with more than an athlete. Like what Colin Kaepernick did, whether people agree or disagree with kneeling for the flag or not, what he's done with the Know Your Rights organization and stuff that he's doing there to, provide funding and information and education to young kids. It's unbelievable. So I agree with you, no question. So I guess my question would be, like, based off of what both of us have said, do we think maybe the period of time where athletes weren't as political, like early, 80s, 90s, early 2000s time frame, do we think that was more of an anomaly than it is for them to be talking about sports? Maybe it's the other way around, because before that we had Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, John Carlos, Tommy Harris, like all those people who were doing that. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think it's more of a, like, that's always been the case and we were just kind of missing the boat for a little bit?
I think it's a combination of things. I think now there's so much technology, there's so many different things going on, and we have access to so much that you can get sidetracked from the real issues, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, I think these athletes were standing up for their everyday rights, right? Like, you were a superstar back in the day in the 1960s on the court, but when you got off the court, you were struggling to vote, or you couldn't go to this neighborhood, or your kids couldn't go to this school. So those are real everyday issues that absolutely, if I'm an athlete and I'm a star and people are idolizing me, I'm gonna use that platform to fight for a better life.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of crazy, in my opinion, for people to not think that it has a place, because that's not just your platform. Like, that's your life.
Yeah.
This is your life. You
Yeah.
are living this life as a professional athlete.
Right.
And whether people idolize it or not, it comes with stress. It comes with a different approach or way to life that you got to navigate. It comes with, but it also comes with the same set of rules that apply to everybody else.
Right.
That maybe are from your race or your gender or whatever it is. So it's
Yeah.
not just a black or white issue or a race issue. It's a gender issue. There's been women and people that are fighting for change in sports that are happening right now.
Yes,
And
right
so
now.
so if athletes aren't speaking up about these things, they would never get changed.
That's true.
And so while it may not be popular to some people, it's absolutely necessary, in my opinion.
Yeah, no question, man. Like, you hit the nail on the head. People living their everyday lives, and this sport and them performing there is just a sliver of it.
Exactly.
And if you have that opportunity to use that sliver of influence you have to the benefit of others, I honestly think that's a worthwhile endeavor to go down for sure.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that athletes have an obligation now? Do you think athletes have an obligation, if you are a superstar, to be an advocate or have a stance about something and be outspoken about it? Or is it okay to be a star? Like, I'm talking about a mega star, and just kind of not want much to do with it in today's society?
I think the modern athlete has an obligation to be authentic, to be them.
That's good.
If an athlete is passionate about civil rights, whether it be race, gender, like any creed, whatever their agenda or thing that they're passionate about is a part of who they are authentically, I think it's beneficial to everyone who watches, everyone who follows them, to be that across the board. And I feel like if someone maybe isn't as inclined to know or care about certain issues, don't force it. Right. Because I think that's where we get a lot of the misinformation, or even we get people kind of trying to toe the line of what is acceptable and what isn't, and they wind up saying things that they want other people to think they should be saying, rather than what they truly believe and feel.
And you can tell when it's real and not.
You can always tell, man. So I feel like for those athletes who feel a strong pull, for the LeBron James, for the Colin Kaepernick, for even Steph Curry and the stance that he's taken as well, like those athletes, when they feel the need, the Bubba Wallace's in NASCAR, like what he did to get rid of the Confederate flag flying at their events, like those people, if you're willing and it's something you care about, I'm all for it. Like, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think when you look at people taking a stand for anything now in entertainment, like you said, in sports, like it's ubiquitous, like it's everywhere. People feel comfortable doing it now. Right. But that's because somebody had to be the first or be the one to really take the brunt of it, right? That's right. And I think, like you said, Kaepernick was one of those people. The athletes back in the day, the Muhammad Ali's, the Jim Browns, those type of guys, they made a real sacrifice, right? No question. And so I think athletes have an obligation, like you said, to be authentic. But if something is true to you and who you are, you have an obligation to yourself and your values to make them be heard, and authenticity comes with that. So that's just kind of my take on it. No question. But I think it's a beautiful thing, man. I think it's a discussion that's been a little bit more open in America that people feel comfortable talking about. Like I said, because somebody had to make it happen initially. Yeah, that's real. And the thing that it kind of makes me laugh a little bit, but it's so ironic. Like, I feel like politics have been forced into sports, or at least patriotism has, from the beginning. Like, you think about it, you're doing like an entertainment event, playing a sports game, and the national anthem is played for all countries. This isn't a uniquely American thing. Right. This is every country. Before soccer matches, we play a game in Canada, they're playing that. Like, it's always been a political arena, and I think
sometimes we just get so caught up in what makes us uncomfortable.
Comfortable about it. Right.
Yeah, they're like if the conversation is something that makes me uncomfortable, I don't want that intermingled into my relaxation, but it always has been.
It's
I
always
think
existed.
we just have to have that kind of perspective to say, all right, maybe I'm being a little disjointed and a little hypocritical here because it's always going to be a part of the everyday life for sure. So I guess my question for you would be, Brandon, like we've talked about Kaepernick a little bit, and I know he took the knee, what began sitting at first and wound up taking a knee afterwards because of the direction from someone who was a veteran. And there was a media firestorm around all of that. And I think it was around 2016, 2015, around that time frame. And I know you were still in the league. You were still playing at that time. But I know you were on the IR, so you weren't like in the same mix that you would have been prior. If you were to rewind to that period of time, do you feel like you would have been one of those guys who took a knee or been the guy who didn't? And even if you didn't or even outside of that, what was your viewpoint as someone who was in the league at that time, and what were you hearing? Like, what were people saying? Just give your perspective.
That's interesting because, like, I think in hindsight, I'd love to say that I would have. But the unique thing about Colin Kaepernick is he wasn't trying to make this some public thing, right? Like he was doing this for his own specific reasons on the sideline by himself.
Right.
And someone was filming him and found it out. And as a result, he spoke out about it. But he wasn't trying to portray this broad message initially.
That's real.
And so because of that, like dudes in the league didn't really understand what he was, really trying to portray initially outside of his like teammates that were doing it with him.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, now it's completely popular and everybody like is behind the movement. But early on, people didn't really understand what he was saying. Like he was really kind of ahead of time in like what he was seeing, and the media wasn't really portraying the injustice and the brutality and this stuff. But he felt so passionate about it then that he made them put a spotlight on it.
Right.
And so that's what's crazy. Like I'd love to say, yes, I would have. And as I got more, knowledge about or really paid more attention to what's been going on this entire time that we haven't been paying attention to because we're so wired to play football or do this.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think now, if I were to do it, I think kneeling is comfortable, right? Like
That's
it's
real.
comfortable.
Yeah.
It's the symbol for the injustice and making a stance.
Yeah, it's almost been gentrified or something.
Exactly. It's almost been gentrified. So I think if it were today and there's still issues going on, there'd have to be a whole nother way to move about it, right?
Yeah.
And because the reason you're doing it is to spark the controversy and bring attention to it. And I think taking the knee now no longer brings attention. It's like putting your hand over your heart for the flag. It's like something that you're doing. So, man, that's an interesting question. I think I would absolutely have been down for the cause, but because I didn't know much, it made me further want to know more. And now it's like a whole nother meaning to me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you are making some incredible points. Like it sparks the conversation and it forces us to do some self-introspection, like self-examination, but also to do research. Like that's the beauty of us. We have Google and we're able to go and find the information, when we have questions or especially things that kind of make us uncomfortable. Like I have always heard, and I know you've heard it too, when you play sports, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that is a mantra that can resonate in our lives as well. Is if something makes us uncomfortable, lean into it and try to find out why. Like, what about this makes me uncomfortable? Because maybe you didn't truly understand it in the first place. So definitely some good nuggets in there for sure, man.
Yeah. That's good. That's golden. I think this even is an uncomfortable conversation. Not really. Even though we're from the same place, we have the same race, but like you don't necessarily know what somebody else's viewpoints are.
No question.
With this type of stuff. So y'all let us know what you think. I think sports and politics will always be synonymous. I think athletes have a platform and a responsibility to speak on things that resonate not just in sport but in life. And so with that comes policy.
No
Because
question.
policy runs our lives in America. And so, yeah, that's an interesting question. But let us know what you guys think. Comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, please tap in on the websites, on our social media pages.
Yeah.
And let us know what you think.
Yeah. See y'all in the next one.